Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and I'm with William Reeve, the CEO of Goodlord. And William's come to talk to me today where he thinks that the post-lockdown bounce in the lettings department could actually be detrimental to the lettings agency industry. William, talk to me.
Well, Chris, obviously it's been a massive shock, this whole lockdown thing, and having the government tell you that they don't want people moving house is very bad for those of us who help people move house, obviously. And we've seen volumes drop as much as 80% year on year for people moving house. So thankfully that was a few weeks ago now, and I think as agents have got their head around this and started using new approaches, they've actually been able to pick up a lot of the volume they were losing. And we're now seeing volumes getting back up to 30-40% below last year's levels. The issue will be, of course, as and when lockdown ends, there's going to be all these pent-up demand. I mean, the reasons for moving house haven't gone away, and we're expecting potentially the busiest day in UK history, the sort of the end of the first week after lockdown.
Well, that's what Coxie said, who's head of the ALA. I think
That's
it was
right.
your podcast week 10 days ago, where I think he said it's going to be like a champagne effect. How are agents going to be able to cope with that, and what are potential solutions for them?
Well, look, it's going to be a challenge if it's that quick. I mean, in practice, I suspect that the lockdown will be released more gradually than that. But if lockdown was released in a way that suddenly enabled agency just to spring straight back, obviously agents will need all hands on deck. So anybody who's on furlough, they're going to need to get back very quickly. At Goodlord, we've asked people on furlough to be on 1 week's notice. So we're kind of hoping we get at least a week's notice from the government. But in practice, I dare say if we rang everybody on furlough up, we could get a lot of people back faster than a week, and that's I suspect what agents would be having to do. They're going to need to make sure their technologies are working. They're going to need to make sure that they've got everybody well briefed. Obviously, there are still legislative changes coming through at the moment, so depending when lockdown ends, they'll need to make sure that everybody's appropriately trained, that their compliance is all up to scratch.
I mean, interestingly, I know you've got like a focus group of quite a few agents that manage in excess of 20,000 properties. And I think looking at your reports, it said that arrears, which obviously can suck an awful lot of time away from agents, is only a matter of 2%, which has got to be great news for letting agents.
Yeah, and that's what we found at the beginning of April. We went and did a review of, as you said, over 20,000 properties, and arrears are up from about 4%. This is, I think, measured as in who's late after a week into the month, which would normally run about 4%. We were seeing it had gone up to 6%. Obviously, May could tell a different story. We haven't quite completed that analysis yet. So, but it certainly suggests that sort of hysteria in the media about it being like 40-50% was misplaced.
Is there any early indications?
No, we don't do it on a rolling basis at the moment. So I think we're expecting May to be a little bit more impacted than April, but I wouldn't want to put any numbers on it.
Okay, good stuff. So let's be all frank. You know, if you'd have asked a bunch of letting agents, could you run your letting agency from your kitchen table? You know, a few years ago, even probably 2 months ago, everyone would have left you out of the room. We've almost had a crash course in tech, haven't we?
We have, absolutely. I mean, you know, same could have been said for the government and the cabinet, of course. What are the chances of them, or Parliament for that matter, Chris? So we've all been learning how to function in unprecedented ways. But I think for those of us in the tech industry, this is just like we've just been put on fast forward, and it's kind of 5 years in 5 months.
And you know, 5 years in 5 weeks.
5 years in 5 months, I suppose, is sort of what I've been thinking. I mean, even my father, bless him, has finally got online at home, and I thought that would take another decade or two. So I think we've all been having to learn new tricks.
I know my mother-in-law I've lent her one of my old iPhones, and now she's doing FaceTime. It's unbelievable.
Exactly.
She just exactly. To her ear, though, bless her. So what lessons do you think agents can learn from prop tech, which will help them moving forward in case this happens again?
Well, I mean, that's one of the concerns, isn't it? That this is just the first wave on subsequent waves of the virus. So I think that people have undoubtedly been getting more familiar with how technology works. They've maybe learnt that some of the sort of security fears that maybe prevented people from working from home before are not as insuperable as they thought. I think they're learning that some some old sacred cows maybe can get slaughtered. I mean, people are obviously prepared to commit to properties without physically viewing them, things like that. Obviously, we're all learning how best to cope with situations, and we haven't yet seen, for example, what happens with academic terms starting. So still quite a lot of questions unanswered.
Do you think that agents will potentially look at their high street locations and think, actually, we don't need to be there?
Well, I think that the whole nature of a real estate and commercial real estate is going to is a question, isn't it? I mean, to what extent do we need offices? To what extent do we need do agents need branches? To what extent, how are high streets going to function, especially if pubs and restaurants and things aren't able to open yet? That's not my area of expertise, Chris, as you know. So I don't yet want to put any predictions on that. But I think fairly clearly there will be changes.
Where do you think the lettings industry is going, though, after this COVID virus? In a good way, in a bad way, or
Well, look, I think we think, as you might be able to see from my T-shirt, we think that the lettings industry as a whole should keep calm and carry on. That's because the letting industry is a very, very stable part of the market. And look, it's pretty clear, I think, that what COVID-19 is not going to be good for home ownership. Okay, people are worried, their incomes are dropping, their unemployment's going up, and what's not good for home ownership is good for the lettings market. So I think the lettings market's in every previous financial market crisis, and we did a review of the last 3 crises over the last 40 years, the lettings market is pretty unaffected by all of them. And the underlying trends around affordability, around population increase, around immigration that have driven the lettings market up north of 10 million homes in the UK, those trends are still here.
Do you think agents are going to recognise that opportunity and grasp it, or go back into their shells?
Well, I think a lot of agents have had a lot of change to deal with, and there is a certain amount of kind of just sort of hiding under the bed, hoping it will all go away. But I think most agents, especially in the last few weeks, have really started to come out from those shells and work out how business gets done. And I think if that more agents are involved in lettings than were, so for example, in 2008 when the last crisis hit, and lettings is a more recurring, sustainable business model. So I think some of the damage done to the industry in the last crisis, I doubt we'll see quite the same thing this time around. And I think agents will all be keen to get out and seize opportunities and get on with their business.
And what final message would you like to give to the UK lettings industry as we hopefully come out of lockdown in the next week or so?
I think it's carry on with your business. Everybody still needs you, and the lettings market is still there for the taking.
Excellent. Can I thank you for your time today, William? I know we've met before, and you must every boys and girls do check those videos out. They are exceptional. William is a very clever man, very insightful man. I wish you well, and I wish everyone at Goodlord well. You're a great firm. You offer some great services. A lot of my clients use you. I'm not being paid to say that, but a lot of people do think the world of you lot. And I wish you well. And
Thank you, Chris, and thanks for the opportunity to talk again. And well done for everything you're doing to keep the spirits up in the industry.
Thank you very much for saying so, sir.